So this vlog, this Battletech podcast is going to be an open thread. It's going to mirror one of the longer and larger commented posts over on my blog with regard to Citytech. City Fight with Battletech, which is an amazing experience in there because it literally takes your tactics and now adds multiple layers, multiple dimensions into the game. And I'm not necessarily talking about having a massive gaming table full of buildings. I mean, that's amazing, an urban environment. It could be just 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 buildings in a small cluster, maybe a small little spaceport or industrial center with some roads and surrounded by hills and trees and more traditional Battletech terrain. As soon as you enter the city, things get really, really interesting. I want to share 2 of my observations. One that might be obvious, but I feel like with a number of new players to Battletech, this is a direction you want to start thinking, even if you're totally a mech head and you love mechs. City Fight is at home for this. And the second is an experience, a tactica that I like to utilize, and I'll leave you to fill in the how, the exact tech, how you want to do it. I'll offer my suggestions, but things that are very, very potent. And I guess a side note worth mentioning, because as a mech commander, as your mech commander, I would be amiss in not mentioning and presenting this. And then we're going to turn it over to the comments. So the first is the power of infantry is massively magnified in City Fight for the battle value of just base infantry. Maybe laser infantry or SRM infantry. It's almost like the numbers need to be adjusted or something, right? You have your mech-based battle value, and then depending on the mech warrior, the mech pilot in there, gunnery and pilot skill up or down, it's going to change the battle value. It's almost like with City Fight, Citytech, you need that for infantry. I don't want to do that and crunch those numbers. But infantry in buildings gives them cover, gives them elevation. Their movement in terms of if it's even jump infantry or just moving, 1 hex on foot, they can literally be in a building, cross the street, next turn be in another building on there. There's lots of places to hide, lots of places to go. Depending on the setup, it's going to force mechs to engage at a close range. You can have, in 4 buildings packed full of infantry and have just some really, really potent kill zones on there. Even if a mech's going to run through it, right? You got to make it through the city to the other side for the objective. And you're like, hey, I'm an assault mech. I'm a heavy mech. You're going to be eating a lot of firepower on there. You're going to need to bring something dedicated to dealing with this on there. But even that is challenging. Let's say you have a mech that has anti-infantry capabilities and it has sustainability, so it's not necessarily a locust running in there. Maybe you have a T-bolt, Thunderbolt on there, right, with the machine guns. There's going to be so much infantry, 4, 5, 6, 8 stands of infantry for the battle value in a medium-sized game, without even going into a larger game, that you're going to take out 1 infantry stand, absolutely. But then those other 3, 4, or 5 are going to hit you. Okay, what did you really accomplish? You'll take out the next one. They'll hit you again. I mean, just massive force multiplier, 100%. Infantry, mandatory for City Fight on there. Indirect Fire. I would not be a good mech commander if you're new to the game to not say Indirect Fire has a place everywhere, especially in Citytech, especially in City Fight. If you can get infantry into a tall building, maybe dropped off by a Karnov or some other fast deployment, or maybe a light mech. I utilize the Thorn a lot for this, just running on the outskirts of the city, running circles, doing laps on the outskirt of the city, popping down, peering down those long streets on there, calling in indirect fire. Archers, longbows, long-range missile carriers, literally raining down hundreds of shots a turn on there. Hundreds and hundreds of real-time missiles. Yes, okay, with movement. Now, you're not moving, so at least you don't have the movement modifiers there for walk or run or driving fast or slow. You're going to have range. Maybe it's medium or long range. Your opponent's going to move. You're going to have indirect modifiers. You might need 11s and 12s, but it's a free shot. And it's a shot that's going to be very hard for your opponent to fire back. And there are times where it is crippling. In a game a little while ago, there was a wasp mech running around. I wasn't sure if it was going to act as a spotter, or I wasn't quite sure really what it was going to do on there, but it was just in range, and I had 2 longbows and 2 LRM carriers. I hit that baby up with hundreds of missiles on there. One of them connected, and I rolled above average, almost legendary for the cluster table on there, and like blew off its leg. It was just insane with the hits on there. The mech's still in play, but essentially it's done, it's out. Now that's lucky. Things like that happen in Battletech all the time, but usually when you get those lucky shots, there's some return fire going on there. Indirect lets you reach out and push that out. So absolutely explore indirect fire. The tactica that I think is important, and you'll need to fill in the units. I use demolisher tanks for this because the range is there, and look, 2 autocannon 20s, heavy armor, mobility, perfect for city fight, a turret. So if you do get immobilized in there, you've got the 360. Of course, you could get turret locked, you could get immobilized, yes. But essentially, you need a way to clear a path. You need a way to level some buildings, because sometimes your opponent just has a really well fortified position based on the buildings. And you're not going to walk in there, but you can't really go around, or the mission parameters are such that you have to. Maybe it's an attacker versus defender thing. Maybe they've got their infantry screens up in there, and you're like, look, I got to pass through there, level that building. Demolisher tank, leveled. Building collapses. I mean, I guess if they're jump infantry, they'll hop off the top, but otherwise, they're going to be taking a lot of damage. There's also key points if you're playing with optional rules in the Total Warfare. PPCs work too, but the challenge with PPCs is the heat on there. And once you start collapsing buildings, if you start pushing the heat, then, okay, now if your opponent comes out, you've got heat going on. But AC-10s can work as well. It's going to be multiple things clearing buildings. There are times where your opponent has hidden setup, a demolisher tank, an Antaros tank. Is the Antaros the one with like 30 medium lasers, something that's like, maybe that's an exaggeration. I think it's like 15 or 20. Something where the first time you see it, you think it's a misprint on the sheet, and you're like, wait, what? That many medium lasers on there? It's just insane. So sometimes you see these really, really potent, or demolisher tanks in a building, really potent, just ambusher, assassin type mechs and vehicles hiding, powered down in buildings, and you might have an idea of where they are. Let's just start laying down some fire and doing some urban pacification, urban remodeling on there. Something in your list, and again, it could be dedicated, it could be spread out, multiple roles, something that's going to deliver, 10 to 20 points of damage in there to be able to easily level 1 or 2 buildings a turn, to kind of level out that clearing area for you to move in and suppress anything that might be hidden. So I'm going to turn it over to you guys now. Thoughts for City Fight. Key things to keep in mind as a mech commander.